Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm here with my good friend Armando Soria, owner of Soria Contracting and Solutions that focuses on restoration, which we're going to get into what that means. I actually worked in that industry for a while when I lived in Seattle and had some pretty crazy stories. So thanks for joining me today, man. I appreciate your time. I know you have your own podcast as well. So I know we run into each other a lot of different events, chamber events, and local things like that. And we just realized, hey, we should sit down and talk sometime. So I'm grateful for you
Yeah,
for joining me today. Welcome.
thank you, bro. Absolutely, and it's a pleasure, man. Like you said, we run into each other all the time, and it's
Yep.
like, man, we just have to get in a
Totally.
room together and just chop it
Yeah.
up.
Well, I'm grateful to do that now. And so tell us, man, how'd you get started? Where are you from originally? Did you grow up in this area?
I did. I was born and raised here in Salinas, man. I,
Cool.
I was born at Natividad Hospital and grew up across the street in the north side, right there. And
Nice.
went to Natividad Elementary School. Went to Hardin Middle School.
Local.
Local. Went to North
That's awesome.
High. Graduated in 2003, and then I did go to Hartnell for a couple years, and eventually I transferred to UC Santa Barbara,
Awesome.
and I was there.
Gauchos.
Yeah, man. But you know what? It was funny. Like, I think for me, I was more focused on getting to college, right? That was the goal. It's like I kept telling myself, like, I gotta get accepted. I gotta get accepted. But what I wasn't telling myself was I have to graduate. I have to graduate. So
Yeah.
I am the first to go to college. I just didn't graduate, you
That's
know?
all right. That's all right. Hey, I didn't go and I just went back last year.
I saw
So
that,
I'm
man.
I'm you know, I'm
Congratulations.
I'm finishing Hartnell this fall and I'll be started at like 39, I'll be 41 when I'm done at Hartnell and then I'm most likely transferring to Cal State Monterey Bay. Um but yeah, college is such a it means so many different things to different people,
Yeah, no,
right?
absolutely.
And it's funny because you don't necessarily need college to be a business owner or to be a contractor.
Right.
A lot of that work you learn on the job, right? And you learn,
Right.
there's different classes you can take to pass those state level exams. And so it depends on what your motivation is, right? People come in, if they come from an academic family or their parents really want them to be a doctor or lawyer, then college is super important. But if it's like if you work with your hands and you're a contractor and you're a business owner, it,
Yeah.
it might be a waste of time. It might be a waste of money. And a lot
It
of a
could
lot of
be.
guys now are seeing, and I'm grateful for social media because us millennials, we kind of were like, college is the only way. If you don't go to
Right.
college, you're not smart. If you don't go to college,
Right.
you'll never get a job. And then you have these other guys who were like hardworking guys, started working in high school
Hmm.
and working with their hands. They got licensed. They're in the trades. They've been making six figures since their early 20s with
Yep.
no debt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you have these
Yeah.
people with a PhD and lots of debt, but can't get a
Yeah.
job. So it's like, all right, well,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. No, it's
so
it's
it
mhm.
depends on your path, right?
It does. It
College can be
does.
great or not. Depends on the individual
Right.
person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm very passionate about that, when it comes to just sharing my story, especially to like our local youth, just to
Yeah.
let them know, of course, we're always going to push education because we want them to better themselves
Yep.
and education, though I have my own opinions, it's an important part of your journey.
Totally.
And my journey wasn't a straight line either. It was all kinds of twists and turns. And so I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I've always been into music.
Yeah.
I know you
Yeah.
are too.
Yeah.
And it's funny, man. I was
That was a
really,
good era to be down there.
oh man. And so the funny thing about it was that I was really into like the house music scene, right?
Okay.
So I started DJing down there, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and I would, it's funny, like I know Revolution and those
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
and we were at UCSB in the same time, and
Yep. Yep.
they'll never know it because those house parties were
Yeah.
just held, and but I would open up parties and they would come in and play
Oh
after.
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's
Those
like, oh
those like, you got to pay for your cup and you keep the same cup
yeah,
all night
yeah,
kind of parties. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
we
it's had a lot of fun and maybe a little bit too much fun, but it was an experience, right?
I know they should have like, there's people that have like, oh, proud UC Santa Barbara graduate parent or whatever. They should have one
Yeah.
like I survived living in Isla Vista.
That's it, man. That's it. And my problem too was I actually lived downtown. And so
Oh,
that it
you
made it
lived
even
in
fun.
downtown Santa Barbara and you went to,
Yeah.
oh, dang.
Which is why I wasn't going to class, right? You
Makes
know?
sense. Yeah.
And so anyway, got into music. It was fun. I started DJing and started getting booked at clubs and
That's awesome.
met really good people and
What was your DJ name?
Mondo Soria, man.
That's dope.
Yeah. I didn't want to do like the DJ Knuckles, you know what I mean? Right.
Well, people don't
So
realize that Stevie Aoki went to UC Santa Barbara,
I
and
didn't know.
he's a
Yeah,
little bit older than us, but he got his start doing the same thing, house parties and Isla Vista, and that's
makes
where his
sense.
record label came from. All of a sudden, he just started like doing shows in LA. That's where he really blew up. His dad started freaking Benihana and all kinds of crazy things anyway. So he was kind
Yeah,
of a rich kid, but he got his start just
yeah.
like partying house parties in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, man. So so it went from like DJing at clubs. Then my now wife was my high school girlfriend, Marisol.
Awesome.
She was going to Cal State Long Beach,
Okay.
and she was doing her general, but she was trying to get into the nursing program down there.
Okay.
So after I left Santa Barbara, I went down with her, and I was closer to LA. So then
Yep.
all of a sudden it turned into playing warehouse parties and desert parties,
Yeah.
beach
Okay.
parties, and I mean
Dude, I
it
didn't
was
know this part of you. That's so awesome.
yeah, man. And so you know what, dude, it's kind of funny. So
We
I
probably
ended
have
up
some of the same friends through that world too. That's
probably, and then I
crazy.
started producing music, right?
Nice.
And right around that time, Marisol, she got accepted to Hartnell's nursing program because Hartnell was basing it on merit
Yep.
versus the wait list that she had to go through at Cal State Long Beach.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So she made the decision to come back to fast track her career. So she basically grabbed me by the ear and says, "Hey man, we're
We're
going back
going
to
home.
Salinas." I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, dude, I
Yeah.
didn't want to, right? Because I
Yeah.
love LA, I love the nightlife and all that, right?"
Totally. Totally.
So, but she always knows best, right? And I ended up moving back home, and it was funny because once I moved back to Salinas, that's when my some of my records actually got signed to some labels in the Netherlands, Mexico, and San Francisco.
That's
So,
awesome.
so then I started, like one of the coolest shows was I got flown out to play at Denver at one of the biggest music distributors in house music is called Beatport.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so Beatport is based out of Denver, and they have a lounge up there in one of the clubs, and I was able to play at the Beatport Lounge, and that was really cool. And
Nice.
so I thought, I was like, this is it.
Well, I gotta admit, when in the '90s, I remember, kind of the rave scene in San Francisco, and
Yeah.
I grew up in a real like strict religious home, so I wasn't really, I wasn't really
Oh,
like
I
getting into
wasn't
those
allowed either.
I wasn't going to those warehouse parties in the '90s, but I knew about them, and my friends were going, and I always just kind of thought like, oh, like raves are crazy, like I probably won't go to that, whatever. Then a couple years later, I'm working in the nightlife scene. I'm doing shows as a musician or as a promoter, and I was all because I'm a musician. I was like all about bands, right? Like you mentioned, Revolution, like all these
Yeah.
cool bands were on the up and coming, and it
Yep.
was a really cool scene. And then all of a sudden, so in the early part of the 2000s, to me, it was all about the bands.
Yeah.
DJs were just like for parties and
Of
background
course.
and
Yeah.
whatever. All of a sudden, the later 2000s, all these European DJs started blowing up, and then it became a thing. It hit the states, right? And so, especially
Right.
the college scene, all of a sudden that kind of took over. And I
Mhm.
remember at first I was kind of like upset about it, like, nah, what? How are you
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
tell me
Yeah.
some random nerd with a laptop is
Right.
as important as a band of 5 people playing instruments live? Like,
Yeah.
I really had a hard time with that at first.
Right. Right.
And I was like, I don't get it, man. These kids are on some like this techno nonsense. Well, obviously there's a
Yeah.
difference between techno and
Sure.
house, but I didn't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that at the time, right?
Right. Right.
So I remember it was just putting pressure on us as promoters. Like we need to go the DJ route because that's where it's at. It's just less equipment. It's less, and I was just
Yeah.
like fighting it because I'm a
Right.
live music guy, band
Yeah.
guy. Anyway, I remember we were in Vegas for a conference or something. And we're like, oh, let's go out. And Surrender and Excess were just getting going. Those and they were just starting to get big name DJs at nightclubs in Vegas. That's what changed the game. When Vegas started paying money for these DJs, it changed everything, right? So I don't know. This is 07, 08, 09 around
Mhm.
there. And
Mhm.
I remember we had front row, and we were right there, like right at the DJ booth, and it was Calvin Harris, and that
Mhm.
his like stuff was just starting to go mainstream, and I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, like I get it now. Like I went through my first like up close Calvin Harris show, and I was
Right,
like, damn.
right.
So then we just, we kind of started adding that to what we were doing. But
Sure.
yeah, that was a crazy scene for a long time, man.
Yeah, yeah, I know it was a lot of fun. It was, but at the same time, at a certain point, you're like, okay, well, I mean, this is cool, but and it was funny because I think I was maybe 24. I was maybe 24 years old when I had, and that's young. It seems old, but it's so young. But at the time, I had kind of like a quarter life crisis. I'm like, well, what am I gonna do? Like, this
Yeah.
is cool, but I feel like I should be doing something, with my life
What
besides.
what kind of decks and software were you using?
I was on Pioneers on
Okay.
CDJs. Like
CDJs.
I was I'm that weird generation. I was
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
I was not doing vinyl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I kind of
It's
missed out
either
on
vinyl or
vinyl.
tractor. So
Right, but I wasn't Tractor either,
right,
right?
right,
So I
right.
was so when Tractor came out, it was like new, and it's funny because I know like the old record heads, they would look at us on CDJs and be like, huh. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they
yeah,
probably
yeah,
scoff at
totally.
us because we're not doing records, right? Well,
Yeah,
now
sorry, I don't want to carry crates of records around.
yeah,
Sorry.
man. Hey, two CDs, bro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no. So all of a sudden, like now, us with the CDs, we were knocking the dudes on Tractor and that kind of stuff, right? Serato, right? Like all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like we're like, what in the world? Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Beat matching, lazy. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. You just click a button.
Yep.
But eventually I ended up playing on Serato
Okay.
and stuff like that. But most of it was on CDJs. So I had like the CDJ 1000s, I think is what they were, and
Nice.
the 4 channel mixer, the DJM 400, I think 600, something like
Well, so
that.
who were some of the DJs that you were like you were looking up to at that time?
Yeah, so it's funny, right? Like really, really, who really influenced me was the dudes from San Francisco. There's a record label at the time they were up in commerce. Now they blew up, but it was Dirty Bird Records.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so Claude Von Stroke, Justin
Dude,
Martin, Christian Martin, all those
that's
dudes.
that's crazy. So I've been more on the other side, on the like event production side.
Mhm.
And so I was part of this festival early on randomly because I was driving an artist there, artist called Zion. I don't know if you remember Zion back in the
Yeah,
day. They're like hip hop for
yeah.
the Bay Area.
Mhm.
And they're going, yeah, we're going to this Northern Nights Festival. I go, what is that? A friend of mine and her boyfriend was like a DJ. And anyway, these DJ homies basically got together and started a festival. I'm like, cool. Northern Nights changed my life. And I was there in the early days and it's blown up now. They just merged with Dirty Bird Campout.
That's
This
funny.
year is going to be the first one. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
have missed it for the last few years. And I'm like, it's always right around rodeo, right
Right,
middle,
right, right.
that third week in July for some reason is the
Yeah,
time everyone wants to get married, everyone wants to
right.
have their class reunion, everyone wants to have rodeo. I'm like,
That's
dude, I,
busy.
I need to get
Yeah.
back up there. Anyway, that's
Yeah,
crazy. That's a
that's
very
really
awesome
funny.
crew.
Yeah, man, and it was cool because there's this like, man, I remember when they first came out, they would do these. They were like free events, Golden Gate Park, just some park. They would just Dirty Bird at the Park is what it was called.
Yep.
We drive up from LA and go catch it, and it was just like being at like a friend's backyard party,
Yeah.
and it's these dudes and seeing what they've done now. It's pretty incredible, right? And I'm sure you go through the same thing in
Yeah.
your world, like you
Oh,
see.
totally.
You know what I
Totally.
mean? See how they humble beginnings to blowing up, and you got to
Totally.
watch some badass
Well,
bands.
to give
You know
you
what I mean?
context, it must have been okay. I think it was the year 2010, turning 11, that New Year's Eve. And a friend of mine and I had tickets to EDC when it was still in LA.
Mhm.
That just wasn't my scene at the time. And
Mhm.
I remember I got a text last minute from Revolution. They're like, hey, we're playing at House of Blues in Anaheim, right there at Disneyland. You want to come to that for New Year's? I'm like, I'd way rather go to that than whatever
Yeah,
this is, because I'm like
yeah,
watching
yeah,
people
yeah.
walk up dressed as fairies and like all the
Yeah,
paint. I'm
yeah,
like, what
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
this? You know?
Right, 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 right.
And so obviously later I realized, I probably should have went to EDC. But yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, no,
you don't know what you don't know.
no, and it's funny, man, and so I did the same. Like, it's funny because it was always a weird balance with between reggae and house music too. So seeing
Yeah.
like for example, like I think that's why I really admired Stick Figure early
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
because he was doing. I mean, obviously he knows how to play instruments. I just know how to hit keys on a keyboard, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that he was like producing his own, doing each instrument, layering his own
You,
tracks,
you want
like
to know a secret?
what's that?
He's not that good of a musician.
Really?
So I've been with Scott in the studio, and Scott is a genius, man.
Mhm.
Scott's real genius is the production
Yeah,
and the marketing.
right.
but there's better musicians on his own band.
Oh yeah, no, I believe it. I believe it.
But actually, he just created a sound and a formula, and it just works. And the guy
Right.
just he just nonstop with ideas, and so I'll give him
Yeah.
that. Like, he's not the best musician on his own band, but he produces some badass music,
Yeah,
obviously.
and I think that's why I was like, oh yeah, because like I'm not the best producer, dude, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But you play with it enough and you're gonna tweak it and find your sound. And so anyway, that was so, but again, it's kind of cool seeing like some of the stuff that he was doing early, 2010s or whatever to
Yep.
now it's pretty wild.
Well, what Scott did that so I got to go on tour with those guys. I drove bus for one of their tours, and got to know them really well, and just over the years doing shows. But what set him apart was he kind of was a troubled youth, got into some trouble in high school, and I don't even know if he finished high school or what he did, but he wound up in South America with like a mentor of his, and it was like this rehabilitation like ranch for youth or something like that. And then he went through it himself, and then he helped he stayed on to help his mentor, like just as staff or whatever. And this is when social media was just coming out, and so he just started like producing little beats and little
Yeah,
things and putting them out on MySpace and
yeah,
all
yeah,
the different sites, and
yeah.
all of a sudden it started to gain traction. So he just was this known as this alias, stick figure.
Mhm.
And then he wound up in San Diego and literally met the most of his bandmates there in San Diego or Long Beach, and just like basically other guys that were kind of doing busking or little coffee house shows just recruited
Mhm.
him. And before you know it, they were on their grind, and I mean, here they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool, man. It's been cool to watch, and I mean, just there's plenty of stories like
Yeah,
that too, right?
yeah,
Like I wasn't at the first, but I was at the second Cali Roots,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I was all excited because Ukla the Mock was gonna play, you know
Oh
what I
shit,
mean?
yep,
And I'm
yep.
like, oh, dude, this is gonna be sick, right? So I went, and man, there was no bowl, you know what I mean?
It
Like
was the OG stage. Yeah,
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 dude, it was
that's
the
it.
OG stage. There's
Yep,
probably like 30 people, maybe
yep.
60, you know what I
Yeah, it
mean?
was
And
my
it was
first time
like,
seeing tribal seeds. I was like, okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah, yeah.
awesome, man.
Kind of that would have
And
been what, 08,
I think so.
around there,
Around
9, 10,
there.
somewhere around there.
Yeah,
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 wow.
yeah. I think it was yeah, right around there. It may have been 010 or 010. It might have been 2010.
Yeah,
So yeah, man. So music,
that's
but
crazy. I thought we were going to be talking about business, and we could
yeah,
go. It sounds like we could
that's
go on and on for. So we're
yeah.
kind of the
So
same era.
yeah, man. So there I was. I'm 24. I got a music school, but at the same time, like I'm not I'm not making royalties, right? I'm supposed to get
Yeah,
like 50% of the sales on like Apple Music and stuff like
right.
that, right? So those tracks are selling for $1.99. I'm like,
Well, that's the thing. It's like, on one hand, it was a blessing that the industry got turned upside down, and all of a sudden there was no more gatekeepers, and you didn't have to get signed to a label. You could just produce your own stuff, get it out there, produce your own shows, all that. But on the flip side of that, with the smartphones, all of a
Mhm.
sudden, instead of buying CDs or tapes or whatever, or records, people were buying or streaming or buying one song at a time instead of the whole album.
Right.
And that was, I mean, convenient, but also for the artist, it's like, well, shit, that just disrupted our income stream.
Yeah,
And then it was almost like you had to do live shows and you had to do
that's
merch,
it.
and
Yeah,
that was
that's
kind of
it.
when festivals came back around.
Mhm. Yeah. No, it's super cool. Like like I said, we could talk it up on that for a while, right? Because
Yeah.
it's super
Who are some
interesting.
of
Right?
your on the production level? Who are some of your inspirations on the just as a producer?
It's funny. So definitely those Dirty Bird dudes when they started producing their music, like so they were known for real bass heavy
Yeah,
tech house, like real bass heavy beats, big breakdowns, big drops. And I think because I grew up listening to a whole lot of hip hop, right?
yeah, yeah,
Just like West Coast hip hop, Death Row
yep,
Records, right?
yep, yep,
G Funk,
yep,
right? So
yep,
those dudes played a heavy role too. So it was like so anything that had like a solid bass line, right? And
yeah.
had like badass synthesizers.
Well, see, I
Like
grew up on G Funk and West
yeah,
Coast rap, but the original stuff, because all the West Coast rap and G Funk they sampled the 70s soul and funk. So my favorite more was the 70s, 80s soul
Yeah.
and funk, like
Well,
Zapp and
yeah.
Roger, Ohio
Yeah,
Players,
yeah, and that's badass because whenever I
um,
hear the original, right, I'm like, oh, they sampled it from. I get all excited.
Commodores. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
But they did a great job with it. So yeah, you're
yeah,
right. So it evolves, and like every
yeah,
decade, someone takes
yeah.
it and spins it their way.
So I think like one of the like I always give credit to like DJ Quick, right, as a producer and as an
Dude.
engineer,
Dude,
and
well,
it's because
rest in peace, Dwayne Wiggins. So I'm a big Tony fan, and so DJ Quick and
Mhm.
Tony were
Yeah,
always real tight. They're from the
and
Bay
if
Area.
yeah, and if you notice that, like, there's something to be said, right? It's like, yes, the beats and the flows and all that kind of stuff, but what like as far as like what grabs me for music is the vibes that they puts out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it's like Stick Figure because of those vibes, the real fucking airy music, right?
yep, yeah,
DJ Quick, same thing. If you listen to his instrumentals, there's a lot of there's a lot of
yes.
vibe to it,
Well, it's
and
funny
so
you wouldn't
that
think about it with
Mhm.
reggae, but with Stick Figure, he's locked into, in the electronic music they have trance, right? Which
Right,
sounds totally different, but just
yeah,
that concept of trance, the reason why Stick Figure, in my opinion, has been so successful is because he's unlocked that kind of electronic reggae trance. It's slower and
yeah,
it's lower. It's bass.
yeah.
My boy Tommy's his bass player. It's low end bass, and it's
Mhm.
slower. But that frequency, he just found the right,
Yeah,
and a lot of
yeah,
it sounds the same, but you still love it. It's just
yeah,
like in the
yeah, yeah.
trance.
So and that's it. And so it's that we'll just refer to it as like a trance, right? But
Yeah,
that's what calls to be music in all genres. If I could find something because it just hits deep and you
yeah,
just actually feel it, like that's what that's what
yep.
kind of gets me. And so it's
Well,
kind of funny,
yeah.
like I like some of my stuff, it's really it's silly, right? But it's fun because it's cool. Like we were just listening yesterday. I was on YouTube, literally yesterday. It's ironic, and we were listening to some Chili Peppers because I wanted to hear them live at a Slane Castle. It's like one of the best concerts ever. But I was scrolling through YouTube, and then one of my songs that I never released popped up that I had uploaded 14 years ago.
Oh wow.
And I was in the car with my kids and my wife, right? And I played it, and like I was like, oh, sometimes I'm embarrassed to hear my own music because I'm like, oh God, right? But at the same time, like this particular track, it was like, oh, dude, like
Yeah.
it hits because
Yes.
so my stuff was very moody. Like it was moody,
Okay.
tech house, deep house, weird shit. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It
that
was
was
really cool.
that was like dead mouse for me back in those days. I remember just like driving into the city, listening to some of that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just
Mhm.
different.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, and that's when I
Yeah.
really my opinion changed when it came to DJs and electronic music is when I started seeing it live. I was like, oh shit, this
Oh
is
yeah.
badass.
Yeah.
And then
It is
also
different.
when I started to realize that a lot of these guys were making it from scratch, like producing it. They weren't just like
Yeah.
playing tracks and like remixing them,
Right.
or they were, but it was like live remixing. Then I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, shit. Like,
Yeah.
so there is a level of musicianship to even being a
Yeah.
DJ.
For sure, and there's something to the ear, right? And I'll close it out with this. One thing is, I was not very good. I think I had a lot of potential because I have a good ear for it,
Yeah,
but I just played around. I never really,
yeah,
like it was like
yeah,
a. But one thing that was cool that I could say that like that on that note is
yeah.
that every single sound, like I engineered every single sound. I wasn't sampling anything from anyone. So that
Wow,
kick drum was my kick drum that I
wow,
designed. That
wow.
synthesizer was my synthesizer. And they're not very good, but
But they're
what I mean?
yours.
They
Yeah,
were mine. And
yeah.
so
That's cool.
so I always had a sense of pride because you could always just download packs and then you'd hear, I'm like,
Yeah.
nah, we're gonna create our own little. So it just
Okay.
started off as a E, right? And then you just start
Yep.
moving it around and stuff.
Dude, that's
But
so well. One, we're gonna hang out and talk more about music offline. I didn't know
yeah.
that's where we were gonna go with it, but I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay, so we could go on and on about music, but as far as when you kind of had that wake up call, like, okay, wifey's
Yeah.
right, she's gonna go back to
Mhm.
school, or she's gonna finish school back home.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna, lose my social life a little bit, but it's probably better for the long term. We're building a family in
Correct.
our careers and all that. So, and
Yep.
you're not the
So,
only one who's a musician or an athlete who had to hang them up temporarily while they
right.
handled their bills and
Yeah.
responsibilities. So
Right.
we're all right there with you.
For sure. So, at that time, 24, I think it was on my birthday, like 24th birthday, I was like, okay, I got to figure something out. Right. And everything kind of changed. So growing up, even when I went to college, this is really, really interesting, and it kind of applies to a lot of my life now. But I was a philosophy major, right?
Ah,
So that's why I'm like super into like the personal development, all this kind of
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
Think and Grow Rich, the metaphysics, all
Dude,
this.
how were we not friends before? This is crazy.
Yeah, well,
Here we are
this is
now.
here we are,
Better late than
bro.
never.
Yeah. So anyway, and the goal behind that, I didn't want to sit on a rock and just think all day, even though that'd be really awesome. I wanted to be an attorney, and
Ah,
so I figured that the critical thinking aspect of something that I truly enjoyed, which was philosophy, would get me to do well on the LSATs and then continue
yeah,
on from there.
yeah,
However, after going to UCSB, I was like, this isn't for me. I can't do like 10 years or 7 years or 5 years of this stuff, right? And so I completely pivoted. So now I'm at home. I had very good influences around me. First off, like I grew up lower middle class, but my parents were set the example of hard work,
yeah,
and I was very blessed that I came from both parents at home kind of thing. They were always at work, but they were together and they were there,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
they definitely instilled the work ethic. Secondly, my second parents, which are now my in-laws, my father-in-law, he's a retired police commander for Salinas PD,
Oh,
and
okay.
you know, uh, just a good man. He's just a good man, and I was like, well, he's a cop.
I
I
how
don't.
was that meeting him for the first time when you went over to ask her
Funny story.
ask
So
her on a date? Oh my
yeah,
God.
they joke
Not only
about
is
it all the
my
time.
dad, he's a commander at the police.
I knocked on the door. He opened it up. He kind of looked at me, looked down, and then he just slammed the door in my face. And
In
and then
uniform or in
no,
casuals?
he was. I don't think he was a uniform, but later I find out that he ran the plates on the car. You know what I mean?
Of course, got to. Yeah. Hey,
So
nice to meet you. Let me see those fingerprints.
yeah, yeah, roll it.
Yeah,
So, but anyway, so and then I also knew that and I don't know how I knew this, but I always felt called to serve, right?
yeah.
And what I mean, and I never did military, and I had always my respects. That's one of my life's regrets is not joining.
Same,
But
same. Yeah,
so much respect for the military,
yeah,
but I always felt like I wanted to be of service, right?
yeah.
And so I go, well, I don't want to be a cop because my father-in-law is a cop, right?
Right.
So I decided, and it was kind of like almost in spite or almost just to tease him. I went fire academy.
Ah,
So I ended up going to MPC Fire Academy. So I got my EMT, did the national registry through Hartnell, or did the class through Hartnell, took the national registry, became an EMT. That was the prereq to go into Fire Academy. So I went into the Fire Academy, and it was pretty intense. It's changed a lot now. It's kind of gotten a little softer, but it was
yeah,
very paramilitary. It was
yeah,
very in your face, and it was pretty intense.
yeah.
And after 6 months or 22 weeks of the program, on the last day of finals, I failed. And the reason I failed was because I didn't tie a knot in 10 seconds. They give you three tries, right? When you're in, and these knots, you're wearing gloves and you're hoisting an axe, so you got to loop do the whole thing.
Yep.
I failed, and a lot of people don't know this. So this is the first
It's
time that
exclusive right here.
this is an
Yeah.
exclusive. So I failed. Oh man, my heart was broken, right? Because you
Oh,
dedicated 22 weeks and like all of your
oh,
everything to this thing, right?
yeah.
The next day, I went back and I signed up and I did it again.
Damn, this is some David Goggins shit right here.
Yeah. So I went back. I went back to the academy, and then I, basically like was a squad leader at this point and did very well. And I passed it. I kicked its ass. And
Okay, good.
and it was incredible, right? I mean, I took a lot of pride in that, even though it hurt like hell, and like, kind of oh man, walk of shame, man. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but anyway, so we knocked it
You
out.
know what? Respect though for you, for one, for telling that story, and two, for doing it, because a lot of people nowadays, they give us a hard time for being like the participation trophy
Yeah,
generation, or we're kind of on the older end, and the younger
right.
generation struggles with that. But now, what I will say, people went overboard with the participation trophies,
Oh
but
yeah.
at the same time, now there's a whole generation of kids that don't even want to try.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
so that's the other extreme of the problem. And so now,
right.
kudos to you for not only trying
Yeah.
hard things and then even in the midst of failure, admitting the failure and then getting back up and trying again. That's, I mean,
Thank you, man.
that's off
Yeah.
to you, man.
No, it's cool, and I think it was because I mean, like I said, I had really good role models. I had really good work ethic. Always had it. However, and, we're still working on it. But that discipline, man,
Yeah.
the discipline and the grit and that fortitude type things that came from the academy. So in those 22 weeks, even though I failed it, there was no way that I was not going to get back up and go do it again. And it was because of what they taught me in those first 22 weeks. So it's kind of cool. So, applied that, went back in, got it done. So it worked out.
Yeah, and I mean, there's different ways to look at it, but like even with not finishing college, which at some point you might, right? Um, it's not a failure. I'm sure you met people. I'm sure those experience that you had while you were there were
Yeah.
valuable, right? So,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
that's I mean, people have that like, oh, if I don't finish, it's a failure. If I don't get that degree, or even, some people's relationships don't work out, whether it's business, whether it's
yeah,
personal. And it's like, hey, it ran its course. It was a
yeah.
season of life, and you learned from it, and then that's what makes it successful,
Yeah.
not whether or not you're still doing it or whatever.
1000%, man. And I'll fill in the gap here, but
Yeah,
just to put that on, just to really highlight that point, marketing,
yeah,
promoting,
yeah,
branding, being able to jump on a podcast or host a podcast. People ask me, "Are you nervous?" I'm like, "Yeah, sometimes, right?" But
yeah,
the thing is that I was a DJ. I promoted at clubs. I did
yeah.
this, that. All that experience tied into this, right?
Totally,
Fire
totally.
Academy. Obviously, I'm not a firefighter, but all those lessons have helped me develop into the leader that I am. Even though I'm not a firefighter, right?
It's also very relevant to the business you have now.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
College, right? The critical thinking, all the philosophy, all that stuff. That's helping me become the man that I am to lead my team, right? So it's every single failure, right?
yeah,
It directly impacts who I am today and how I run my company, how I show up, in life.
yeah,
And it's nothing more than experience. It's what it comes
totally. And like you said, there's
down.
there's different ways to approach failure or rejection, right? Some people say rejection is redirection, and so sometimes if you're able to honestly, and this is a philosophical thing, if you can really critically think and self-evaluate, you can say, okay, because sometimes there's circumstances beyond your control, like
Sure.
the dot-com boom or the '08 crash or
Right.
the war in Iraq
Totally.
or the pandemic or whatever.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
things are kind of beyond our control. So it's how we respond to them. And then other times, you know, when it was your fault,
Right.
when it was you that didn't show up or weren't disciplined enough. Even right now, I'm in the middle of
Right.
college and I'm like, why did I do this at this age? Why didn't I do this 20 years ago when I had the time and the energy and the
Right.
focus? And now I'm older, and so I have that experience, but I'm about a 3.0. I see what it would take to have a 4.0, and I'm like, nah. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
nah, this whole C's get degrees. It really makes sense now.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely, man.
who has
Yeah.
the time for that kind of like effort?
Right.
No, no, not
Right.
no. I'm just, because for me, like you said, personal development, I'm reading on my own. People are like,
Right.
you didn't go to college, as if like that's the only way to be smart. Like, oh, I read the same books. I just no, I didn't go to an institution, but I am now, and I'm seeing like, okay, I'm older than some of my professors, and it's a lot of extra work. I'm like, who's got the time for this? Ah. Anyway,
Yeah. No, all good, man. And yeah, absolutely. That's how it relates. And so anyway, the gap in there. So after Fire Academy, I needed a job to hold me over while I was applying for municipalities because I wasn't sponsored. I put myself through the academy. Actually, my dad helped me go through the academy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So anyway, I was self-sponsored, meaning that I wasn't hired on by a department to go get the training, right? So coming out, I had no job, and I was applying, man, up and down California, all the way up to Seattle, to be a firefighter, and it was a tough time because the economy hadn't recovered from '08, right? And because this was 2010.
yeah.
And yeah, man, I was applicant one of 1,000. And the job would go typically to the firefighter who was laid off and from a city. So they were coming on lateral, which is rightfully so,
So there
man.
was no opportunity for new guys.
No, man, it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
tough. And so that's how I kind of fell into property damage restoration, man. One day I was like, well, I need a job. I'm not going to school anymore, right? Because I graduated, right? Because that was it.
Meanwhile, wife is finishing school and
She's
becoming
still
a
going to
nurse.
nursing school,
Oh,
doing
okay.
her thing, right?
Yeah.
And so she's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I need a job. So I went on Craigslist, right? I went on Craigslist
Wow.
and I searched fire, right? Right?
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, and so what popped
Wow.
up was actually ServPro, right?
Yep. Yep.
Where I started my career. It
They're
was
like the
ServPro.
corporate national chain of
Yeah,
that
it's a
type of business.
franchise.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
property damage restoration franchise. And the reason it came up is because their slogan is ServPro. Then it says fire, water, cleanup, and restoration. So
Right.
fire popped up on, and so I looked at it. I'm like, I don't know what the hell it's saying, but it says overtime and they're
Yeah.
hiring. So I applied, and it was funny because I showed up in a suit for this job, right? Because the fire academy they showed us how to interview and all this kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Uniform and yeah.
Yeah, so I show up in a suit, and it was like just literally like a general labor position, right? Just the starting entry level technician. And so they offered me the job. I accepted it at $13 an hour, right? And it was pretty cool. The first day they sat me down in front of a computer and started doing their onboarding. And it was talking about cleaning carpets and how to move furniture from the outside of the room to the inside so that you could clean around it. I'm like, what in the world? Like,
Where does fire come in?
I wasn't very happy, right? I'm
I'm here to
like,
save lives, not carpets.
yeah, man, what's going on, right? But then it happened, right? The most beautiful thing happened. Well, I'm sorry to the homeowner, but someone called and they had a pipe break in their ceiling in somewhere in Carmel. Big old house, right? The water ran from the top, flooded down the 2 levels, and the technicians that were working that job needed backup. So just like any small business, they're like, "Hey, grab a respirator and go, go out there and
Yeah.
have some fun." I'm like, "All right." So I went out there, I helped the guys, and we started, demoing sheetrock and doing the job. And man, the camaraderie, the
Yeah.
BSing with the guys,
Yeah.
just like knocking out drywall,
Yeah.
overtime because we did like a 12-hour shift. I was like, this is pretty cool,
Yeah. Yeah.
And slowly but
You get
surely,
your stress
I,
out.
yeah, man. I was like, might as well made me leave DJing, you know what I mean? So
Oh,
I
bro,
started.
not that wall.
Yeah, whoops. So I fell in love with it, man, and so it was. Now I wasn't so bummed out. So I was like, well, I was still applying, but I was doing this thing, and it was kind of working out for a little while. But at the same time, I still wanted more. I still wanted to pursue the firefighting thing, and I kept getting. I went to interviews, I did the whole thing, but I just wouldn't get the job. And so at a certain point, my wife says, well, she was still my girlfriend. She goes, "Why don't we try out of state? Would you consider going to Texas?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." And why Texas was because her sister had just recently moved out there outside of Houston and said it was great, this and
Got it.
that. So I'm like, "All right, cool." So I hopped on Craigslist. I typed in Surpro in Houston, and I found one. I sent my resume. They called me like 20 minutes later, and they offered me the job.
Awesome.
I went back to my office. I gave them a 2 weeks notice. I threw my shit in the truck and I moved to Texas while my
Holy
wife was
shit.
here. Yeah,
Oh
just like
man, how did you handle the humidity in Houston?
I thought I was gonna die. You know what I mean?
It's a sauna.
Coming from the Central Coast of California, man, to go when my first job out there was in an attic. Oh man, it was
Oh
it
shit.
was tough. It was tough. But
You don't think about the jobs based on the climate, right? So we're spoiled here in Salinas,
yeah.
with pretty great weather. Imagine being a roofer in Arizona
Yeah.
or a
No, it was
surf
that.
pro in freaking the
It had
South.
to be, I mean, it had to be like 140, 150, 160 degrees in that attic. And you're pulling wet
And then
insulation
you got to be covered in the
and you're wearing
bodysuit and
a
the
suit.
mask and
Yeah.
oh
So lots of
yeah,
breaks, lots of water, right?
yeah.
But no, it was cool because that franchise I went to go work for, I'll just start kind of wrapping, like summarizing
Oh
it. That
yeah,
franchise
you're
I went
good.
to go work for was a larger operation than it was the one I was working for here in California. And so next thing you know it, Hurricane Isaac hit,
Oh, yep.
and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna go to Louisiana." I'm like, "What?" Well, I'm gonna. We were engaged, right? And Marisol was graduating that spring, and then we were gonna get married in September. So this is around August when this is happening in
Yeah.
Texas. So the plan was to fly to California, get married, and our honeymoon is going to be spent driving back to Texas. And so when they asked me to go to Louisiana, I'm like, well, I'll go, but I got to be back because I got to go get married, you know? So, but I did it and it was awesome. And, made it in time, got married, drove back. And on our drive back, I had two phone calls. One of them was I got offered a paid call position, paid on call for a fire department. Um, and then the second was they were promoting me to a project manager in the restoration industry. And at the time, Marisol, being that she just graduated nursing school, she still had to transfer or apply for her licenses in Texas and do all that. I felt that responsibility to be the breadwinner and all that kind of stuff and
Yeah.
provide. And so I accepted the promotion and I accepted the part-time paid call thing with the fire
In
department
California or Texas?
in Texas.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Yeah. So I accepted both. We show up to Texas. Now it's like September, October comes, and then hurricane, well, Hurricane Sandy hit the East Coast in October. And they asked me to go and manage the team out there. I'm like, okay, cool. How long will I be gone? They said, well, about 2 weeks. So I tell the fire department, hey, sorry guys, I got to go take care of the East Coast. I'll be back in a couple weeks. Unfortunately, it turned into a 3 month project. And so I lost the firefighting thing, but I was taken care of by our boss over
Yeah.
in Houston and financially
Invaluable experience. Yeah.
invaluable experience. He bonused us out. He showed me how much money and potential there is in this industry. And all I cared about at that point, because it turns out we found out that my wife was not pregnant, right? Like I'm like, oh dude, I gotta take care of
Life
the
was
family.
happening. Yeah.
So that was when I pivoted from firefighting, let it go, and went all in on restoration. So I did that for about 5 years or 6 years, traveling the country, and then eventually promoting to operations manager. So my job for that large franchise was to travel to mentor smaller franchise owners on handling large loss projects, so commercial
Mm,
projects that
yep.
exceeded $1 million. So
Wow.
they or actually anything over 50,000, they would
Yeah.
call us in because we were a designated large loss team. So like I had my hand in restoring Phillips 66, ConocoPhillips,
Wow.
a refinery in New Jersey, a bunch of college dorms in Austin, just all over the place, Arizona,
Wow.
churches, schools, like, so all this kind of stuff. So anyway, I had really, really valuable experience. And I was also working hand in hand with a bunch of different business owners. So of course, naturally, it's like, well, when am I going to get
You were
my,
inspired. Yeah. Well,
you know
that,
what I
and
mean?
so I worked in, my friends of mine had a company called Allied Restoration. They're originally from this area, but they moved up to Seattle. And when
Mm.
I was living up there, I was waiting tables, I was bussing tables at night and bartending at night. And then I was working for them during the day doing restoration. And same thing, a lot of those experiences where I was like, man, this is hard work, but it was good work. At the end of the day, you felt like you worked, you're getting up
Yeah.
under houses, knocking down walls. And I love the demos. I hated the delicate ones where they just had a little thing that needed to be fixed and you had to like tape everything down
Yeah, yeah,
just for
yeah.
one little piece. I was like, nah,
Mhm.
I want everyone out. We're just demoing walls. Give me those jobs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but you're right. I got to see like this the business side of it was these are some big projects, but then you're dealing with insurance companies, and then you're also dealing sometimes
There's
right
building consultants,
utilities,
engineers, yeah, brokers. There's so
all
many
these
different
things to
hands.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think, and that's where the all the experience and from reading all those philosophy books and like I was born with the gift of gab, like
yeah,
so that always helped. But coupled with being able to hold a decent conversation, I was a kid, you know what I
right,
mean? 27, 28, 29, 30 years old, talking to 60-year-old consultants about
right,
building engineering and what I'm like,
right. Yeah,
fake it till you make it, baby.
yeah, yeah, totally. I can relate.
Yeah, man. And so, that was kind of it. I ended up from Houston. We were living in Houston. We uprooted a friend of mine who was my coworker. He opened up his own franchise in San Antonio. He asked me to come out and he'd give me like a 10% profit share type deal. So it was starting to fulfill what I wanted, right? And so I uprooted the family. That was its own little deal there with the wife,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
she was happy. At this point, she was working for Texas Women's as a labor and delivery nurse,
Oh
which
wow.
Texas Women's is like the equivalence of like a Stanford, but
Oh
in Texas.
wow.
So she was not very happy about uprooting, but she did. She went along. I mean, she made me move from LA to Salinas, so I'm taking her to San Antonio, right? So I did that for about a year, but she really didn't. She couldn't adjust to San Antonio. She just missed the way that things were because we had to, downgrade our life because we had, we at this point in Houston, we had built a house, we had our careers, our kids were growing up. So now to move us into a little apartment to kind of start over, I didn't do a good job communicating the vision, is what it comes down
Mm.
to. I did not do a good job of communicating the vision.
I can relate to that too with my wife. So,
I
what
think
are
we
you
all
doing?
can. Yeah, and
It's a challenge.
I'm still
Ladies,
working on that.
ladies, we love you. And if you or and it goes both ways, right? I mean, you met with Crystal Murphy, who's a mutual friend, and her husband Mike is a good friend, and I've grew up with both of them. And it's hard when you're a visionary because sometimes the vision isn't always clear. And so if you're in a relationship with a visionary or an entrepreneur or someone who always has creative ideas and wants to try different things, it can be frustrating.
Yeah,
And it's hard for us because it's like we don't want to turn it off and stop the creativity because it leads to amazing opportunities
right.
and experiences. But at the same time, in the day to day, when you got to pay the bills and you got to plan a schedule, it's hard to have someone else kind of depending on, when your mind might change from month to month, or why you're putting so much time into something that maybe it won't pay off for a while, or all these things. So I can relate to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the plan, what the plan was hey, Armando, I'm gonna open up my franchise over here, come in as a 10% profit share deal, and then use your profits. We'll buy a second franchise, and on the second franchise, I'll do the 10%. You'll be majority owner there. Then we'll buy
Smart.
more franchises. That was the plan.
Yeah.
Because and he's one of my best friends, Jared Richards. He's doing very well now.
Recession proof business, by the way, because pipes be bursting no matter what the economy's
especially in
doing.
especially in Texas, right? Just because there's just a lot more plumbing out there with HVAC running 24/7 and things like that. But
Yep.
at any rate, we didn't communicate well with the wife, so it came down to like, hey, listen, like I'm not happy. We can't go back to Houston because we have tenants at that property. But here's the deal: our kids are getting a little older, and we're by ourselves out here. We did have a aunt, we did have some family.
You want the
Uh,
kids to have their cousins and the grandparents, and yeah,
yeah, she's like,
yeah,
if we ever wanted to come back home, now's the time. And I'm like, dude, like, I don't want to
all
go,
that's going on in Texas. Yeah,
but she was right. I mean, the kids around I mean, my parents are still here, her parents are still here, right?
yeah.
And so that was when we
You can't put a
decided
price
that,
on that.
yeah, no.
Yeah,
And so we're like, you know what? As much as it hurt to leave, it was the right decision. And so, I mean, I'm blessed to be able to see my kids grow around. Even my grandma's still around, so they got to
yeah.
go
That's awesome.
great grandma. And so we made the move back, and it was tough,
And
right?
you're saving money on air conditioning.
Yeah. I want to talk about the price
And
difference in the
Mexican food is better
houses.
in California than Texas. I don't care what anybody says.
No queso,
I'll
man.
fight anybody on that.
Dude,
Queso
right,
dip is
you're
cool, but like real Mexican food is better in
right.
California than
Yeah,
Texas. I'll fight. I don't
100%.
care. All right. Cool.
100%.
I'm glad we agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, man. So, whatever. It came back here, and it didn't take me. Well, I think I went back to working for the franchise. So it was really hard to go back to like a 9 to 5 from having the taste, a little
Of
sass
ownership.
of ownership.
Yeah.
Though I wasn't an owner, that was like another thing where I had to check my ego later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But still, that freedom, was
Yeah.
taken away in a way, and it was tough working 9 to 5, and it was like I'm really, really, really productive and really like
Well, I can relate to that from having
yeah,
like being on tour, doing these major festivals. All of a sudden, I'm rubbing shoulders with these big name artists. I'm doing all these
yeah,
cool things. And then, event's over and I got to go get a regular job. And then I got to try to put that on my resume and explain to people what I was doing last summer. And here I
yeah,
am just like, yeah, cool, bro. Can you just like get me a beer? I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, I'll get you that beer. But you don't
yeah,
know, and
yeah,
yeah, it's when
It's
you
tough.
care, and I look back and I think, oh, I could have had an easier path and maybe been further along and owned properties and had a degree and had a nice resume. But the memories I've had over the past 20 years,
Yeah,
you can't like there's no like
Oh,
strategic plan to
absolutely.
experience all those things. And so now I'm more focused on building my resume
Mhm.
and a traditional career. But for the past
Sure.
20 years,
Yeah,
um,
and
I
all that
wouldn't trade it.
experience will apply. You know, all that
And
experience
it
will come back
totally
around.
does. It totally
Yeah,
does.
absolutely. As did my time with my buddy
So you
Jared.
came
And
back home,
yep,
wifey's
working. So,
happy, kids are
so
happy.
kids are happy. I'm not. Everyone else is now. I'm not happy, right? And I'm
But that
like,
frustration is the mother of invention, right? It leads to, which is what yeah.
so I worked for the local Serpro here, and I still have a great relationship with them. Shout out to Mr. Steve Carrillo, right? Like he was a great dude to work for,
Yeah.
and he takes care of his customers, right? Does things the right way.
Yeah.
But one thing that I wanted to make sure that I did when I came back, when we made that decision to come back, we did have one conversation that really influence what we're doing now and the direction that we move and that's we came back with growing up here was tough,
Yeah.
right? Growing up here in the early 90s
Yeah.
in Salinas, it was difficult. There's still
Yeah.
some holes at my dad's house, you know what I mean?
Well,
It was
all the bad things you hear about Salinas, a lot of them were from that era.
right,
I
and
remember.
from our neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
tough, right?
Yeah.
And luckily for me, I played sports and a lot of baseball. Shout out to Atlantic Little League, they saved
Yeah.
one here. You know what I mean?
Is
And
that the
my
one off
parents,
Laurel?
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah.
right there.
Sergio, my boy Sergio's. I think he works with you on that one.
Nice.
The teacher at North Salinas. Anyway,
Oh yeah,
he's always
right
promoting it,
on.
tagging me in it. I'm like, bro, I don't play little
Yeah.
league.
Yeah, well, it was awesome growing up and playing ball instead of running the streets, right? And then I had a
Yeah,
great circle of friends too, so we did a lot of we played a lot of football in the streets and stuff like that. So we kind of, we stayed out of trouble for the most part.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But so anyway, the decision to come back home was pretty tough because we have two little girls, Mia and Sophia, who's now 12 and or about to be 12, and one that just turned 10.
Oh wow.
So they're itty bitties when we moved
Yeah,
back. And so
yeah.
we're like, well, we're gonna come back, then we have to do what we can to make this place better than it was when we grew up,
Love that.
because it was tough, right? And now we're leaving. The school district in Houston was phenomenal. Like all the
Ah,
schools rated nines and tens, and over here, unfortunately, the ratings are pretty bad for elementary and high school.
yeah. I
So
know.
we're
Well,
like,
I'm
well,
a realtor as well, and so I see like how am I trying to sell these $1 million homes like in North County District where I grew up, $1 million homes, and it's a 2 out of 10 school district. Like, what are we
yeah,
doing? What are we
yeah.
doing here?
Yeah, and it's not a knock on the educators or the
It's tough.
district.
I know. I
It's
know.
it's and I know that I know a lot of educators and I know the amazing stuff that they're doing to
Yeah.
improve that. But coming in from the outside, not I'm like,
There's all these other factors.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so with that being said, I just wanted to really get involved and do that kind of stuff. So that was lacking at my job where I was working. Oh, the camera's. Hold on,
You're
sorry,
good. You're good.
I'm gonna switch over to this guy.
No worries. We had technical difficulties earlier, so we just roll with it. But the audio's still working.
Good. Let's see. HD webcam.
So you were saying you came back to Salinas
Yeah, wanted
and
to make a change, wanted to
yeah,
make an impact, wanted to contribute any way that we could. And so that was right around 2020.
yeah,
I finally saw the opportunity to go out on my own. And so I handed my letter of resignation and went all in on my business. And we officially opened our doors in January of 2021. And it was kind of cool because I was very fortunate. I have a lot of equipment.
I saw your video, bro. That's people don't all those vehicles and all that equipment. Like I was like, okay, these guys are next level. Like that's a lot of equipment
it's a
and
lot of
trucks
gear
and staff.
and the bands we've accumulated, just doing our thing. But like that equipment, all those stuff, man, those fans, I like normally like to go buy an air mover, like it could be anywhere from $200 up to like $450 for each of those fans.
Right.
The dehumid, mine are older. Don't come at me. Don't come at me.
Yeah.
But dehumidifiers, they're like, 2 grand, 3 grand, 4 grand each dehumidifier, right?
Right.
So the thought of investing in drying equipment, like, you're like, all right, well, we see this all the time on the forums. It's like, well, how much equipment do I need to get started? Can I get away with buying like 4 fans and one dehumidifier to get
Dude,
started?
my boss used to rent them from Home Depot.
And that's the best way to start. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, my buddy Jared in Texas knew that I was gonna go on my own, and he sold me 150 of those fans. Actually, there are 129 of them, but he sold me 129 of those fans for pennies on the dollar.
Wow.
And he did that for me as a way to
Shout out to him, man.
thank me for helping him get started. He's now,
Oh,
their top line revenue, they're probably between 3 and 5 million now. Right.
nice.
So he's done very well, and he deserves all that success. And then his
Nice.
way of helping me out was hooking me up with that equipment.
Awesome.
So to hit the ground running with an inventory like I do, it really set the tone and allowed us to just come in hard.
Yeah, and you did.
So the first thing I did was reach out to all the local restoration companies, and because I don't see competition, I see collaborators, right?
Yep.
So I
Yep.
reached out to every single one of them. I introduced myself. Some of them reciprocated, some of them did not, but
Right.
that's okay. But I said, hey guys, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. If you guys need anything, let me know. I'm sure that I can't handle everything, so I'll reach out. And that was day one, man. And we just hit the ground running, and it's been good.
That's awesome. Wow. I love hearing that story. I know there's more to it, but so we could go on and on. I'm glad we had this conversation. I wasn't sure exactly where it would go, but obviously we have a lot of mutual friends and a lot of things in common. So I'm excited and grateful to be connected. And I'm excited to see where things go with your business and all the contributions you're making, whether it be with the podcast or the different community events and the coaching and that kind of stuff. So, where can people find you if they want to hear more about your story, or if they ever have an emergency at their house? What's the
Yeah, yeah,
best place
yeah.
for people to find you?
The best place is we're very active on our social media, particularly on Instagram. So it's Instagram. It's at Soria_solutions,
Okay.
and then you can find my personal page where it's more of just my personal content, and I like to share the journey of an
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And
Love
so
it.
that's at Soria_Mondo, and
Okay.
it's pretty easy. He's pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of Soria
But
solutions out
real, and then what about the podcast? And then where can we find your music?
there. So the podcast is on Spotify, everywhere, right?
Okay.
YouTube, you get the full length videos on YouTube. You got Spotify, you got Apple Podcasts. It's called The Ripple Effect, water
Okay.
damage, right? A little play on water damage.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I see it.
The
Okay. Okay.
Ripple Effect with Soria. And then my old music, you can still find it on iTunes. It's Mondo Soria.
All right. Dang.
Yeah, man.
Well, I appreciate, one of the things I want to do with this podcast, if nothing else, is just have these kind of conversations and show it. I think our generation maybe is one of the first to deal with this dilemma. Well, we're not the first ones to deal with it, but we have it in a different way because of social media. I think people in previous generations, they chose a path, they stuck with that path, whether it was a relationship or whether it was a career or whatever. And then you kind of lived your life in this corner of the world, where now with social media, for better or for worse, we see all the different things going on. And of course, we see the highlight reel. We don't see the real things all the time, right? I try to keep it real, but not everybody does. But now you can have and maintain your multiple passions, right? You can have multiple businesses, or let's say you have one primary career, but then you have a hobby and you play in a band on the weekends, or you're a gamer, or you have maybe you're an influencer and you have a beauty TikTok or whatever for the ladies. There's options now.
Absolutely.
And I think for some of us who grew up with parents who were hardworking, maybe they're immigrants, they were just happy to get here and to pay the bills. They
Yeah.
didn't have time or resources. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have
Yeah.
the ability to keep hobbies going. And so they worked hard, they partied hard, and they went to church, and that was it. And now
Yeah.
we're like, oh, shoot, we
Yeah.
actually we have all these things, we're juggling all these things. And so I don't have it all figured
100%.
out, but
No.
what I won't do is I won't shame anyone for having multiple interests or wanting to moonlight as a podcaster or a performer, or have a hobby or a little knitting group or whatever you're into. It's possible now. You just have to really manage your time. And for those of us that grew up in the 80s and 90s with those parents that grew up in the 60s and 70s, it's like 50s,
Yeah.
that didn't get to have the same hobbies or passions as adults, and probably resented it. And
Yeah.
now we're trying to, in some ways, not only as adults, but also like still live out some of our childhood, because we had to grow up and give it up and to pay the bills and raise a family like you have, but you still love music. Maybe you're not going to be playing festivals anymore, but you still love music. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm starting to play again, and I kind of retired out of being a promoter and a manager and all that. And I'm like, I'm just going to be a musician, and I'm not even going to, yeah, I'm just going to play gigs here and there, and I'm going to have a good time, and that's it. And I'm loving it.
Yeah.
So
No, that's what's up,
last
man.
message, and leave us with this. What would you say, based on what I just said, what kind of is your version of that? And I'm proud of you for doing all the different things
Yeah, I
and
appreciate it.
sharing your journey. And I'm excited to see what you do next. But what would you say based on what I just said?
No, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of baggage that comes by generational
Yeah.
trauma, I guess you
Yeah.
could say, right?
Yep.
And it's a
Totally.
whole other podcast for another day.
Right.
I could go into the scarcity and everything else, right? Limiting
Yes.
beliefs, everything like that, right? My parents, all they wanted from us, all they wanted for us was for us to have security. That's all they wanted. And it looks
Right.
a lot different for them than it does for us.
Exactly.
And so if you have to pivot, like just pivot, man. You know what I
Right.
mean? I've done, like I said, my journey has been nothing.
Roller coaster.
It's been a wild roller coaster, but
Yeah.
every single experience has led me to becoming the best version of myself, and I'm continuing to work on myself and continue to go down that path.
Same.
It's not done, but we're doing some pretty cool shit, and
Yeah.
it's just because we followed our passions.
For sure. Well, I appreciate your time, man. I'm glad to know more about your story, and it's crazy how similar our stories are. I'm
Yeah.
excited to build some things together, and let's keep the positivity going. Let's continue to spread that message and work hard, and I'm glad that we're here locally doing it together. So let's definitely collaborate more than we have, and this is the start of that. So thank you so much for your time on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure when we're going to post this, but we're recording it on a Saturday morning, and you could be doing a lot of things. I'm sure your phone's blowing up. So thank you for spending some time with me today, and I hope people get as much out of this as I did.
Absolutely, bro. We'll do it again. All right.
All right,
Appreciate
let's do it. Take care, man.
it.
Talk soon.